Hi everyone. So as Quentin said, my name is Julien Lépine. I'm a solutions architect. I'm working, as you can hear, in Europe and specifically based in France. And I'm covering Microsoft and developer technologies with Europe-based customers of AWS. So today's session is going to be around DevOps on AWS with Visual Studio. We're going to see some of the DevOps practices that we do have within AWS and that we see in the market. And we're going to also see some of the practices that Visual Studio can provide you and help you with when used in conjunction with AWS. So as Quentin said, quick word on logistics. You have a questions pane that is open throughout the webinar. Ask questions. We have a team of moderators that's going to answer. The presentation is going to last around 30 minutes and slides are going to be available for download. You're going to receive an email. What we're going to expect from this webinar, again, quick view on DevOps, some practices, integration with Visual Studio, which is really one of the key points in this webinar. And we'll finish with some of the new architectures that we see, and we already had questions around specifically .NET Core and some of these versions that are now deployed on the .NET framework. So we're going to speak a bit about that as well. So to get started, one of the first questions I have from my customers is, why should we move to DevOps? Traditionally, in enterprise environments and any company actually environments, we have teams of developers, and these developers usually just throw the code above the wall to the operations team. And one of the mantra we have is, it works on my machine. And it's been working for years, but we've seen throughout many decades of doing that process that we should be a bit more agile in that process, and we should have more a collaboration between the developers and the operations team to make sure that we're going to have value to our customers. In the last 15 plus years, we've seen a great rise of agile software development. And agile software development was really the case for bringing the business and their needs, their business cases closer to the developers, and having these sprints or having these agile methodologies and fast delivery really made sure that we can have a product that adapts to the need of the customers as fast as possible. And if the business changes, you're not going to have to wait long times to be able to change it. But again, that was for the developers. And what we've seen lately is that with the rise of cloud computing and modern architectures, we had practices that were not aligned to that agility in terms of deployment of the infrastructure. And that's exactly where DevOps comes. DevOps is really made for bringing IT operations closer to developers. And as we've been working for the last 15 years to bring developers closer to the business, it actually brings IT operations closer to the business as well. And some of the practices that we do see in that environment are really centered around IT automation, continuous integration, continuous deployment. And we'll see some other practices such as A/B testing later in that webinar. And really bringing IT agility helps you have business agility in the end, which is really the key goal of any software development and deployment practice. One of the philosophy we do have within AWS, and that's embodied by Werner Vogels, our CTO, is the you built it, you run it philosophy. And that philosophy means that we can have teams, and that's what we do internally within Amazon. We have teams that actually do the development and the operations of the software within the same team. And that can go up to the fact that developers do have a pager, and this pager is going to ring at 2 a.m. if something goes wrong. And that's an extreme of being DevOps oriented, where actually developers are also in charge of the operations. But we have a wide spectrum of ways to build and deploy DevOps practices within companies and make sure that your company is going to be successful in deploying software at scale. So when you move and when you migrate to cloud applications, there's multiple paths. Here we have 6 different strategies. 3 key ones I'm going to be focusing a bit more around. The first one is rehosting, taking your application as it is on premises, moving that to a cloud platform using migration tools. Usually it's a byte per byte copy of your environments. Or you just create a new environment that's going to be exactly a copy of your existing environment and just copies the data. So really it makes sure that your applications are going to be migrated, but you don't touch the code. The second step that we see a lot is what we call replatforming, the yellow line here. You build a new platform that's going to be optimized for cloud computing. So you're going to be using value-added services, you're going to be using lots of automation and making sure that everything is as streamlined as possible. But again, you're not touching code or touching code as few as you can. The last point, which is the most interesting in terms of migrating to the cloud, is going to be refactoring, making sure that you can rebuild either your entire application or part of your application to actually leverage the value of the cloud. So that's going to be much more code intensive, but that's where you're going to have full application lifecycle management or software development lifecycle practices that are going to be integrated in your platform. And everything is going to be integrated and automated from the code to the architecture and the platform. And to do that, one of the key things is automation and infrastructure as code. Whatever the path you go, we usually encourage you to look at infrastructure as code. And in that environment, Visual Studio is usually a good tool for developing, auditing, and managing your templates. And we do provide a tool, which is the AWS Toolkit for Visual Studio. It works for Visual Studio 2013, 2015. We just released last week the 2017 version of this toolkit. It integrates fully within Visual Studio and gives you many practices where you can actually directly from within your IDE work on your platform. And we're going to see some of these practices in this webinar. The first one is, as I say, infrastructure as code. Instead of having to create tickets and ask for new platforms to be built, the best way to build an architecture is actually to describe this architecture in documentation. But documentation, if it's only a Word file that someone has to read and just reapply the steps to create a new platform, is not going to be the most effective use of your time. So infrastructure as code comes one step further in terms of documentation and actually creates executable documentation where you can create templates of architectures. And in that case, we have a complex web architecture. So it's a 3-tier architecture with a backend database, application server, web server, and we even have some value-added services such as load balancing, S3, and DynamoDB to have more agile architectures. All these environments are actually described in a few files, the templates that you see here. And instantiating one template is just a few commands that you can run directly within Visual Studio. And you can even edit and manage these templates within Visual Studio. And that gives you the possibility to create such a platform within minutes. And if you have a new project or a new environment you want to create, again, you can create that infrastructure again and again. It's repeatable and it's completely executable. When you work with Visual Studio, one of the things you can do is just basically open these CloudFormation templates within Visual Studio. You're going to have all the benefits of IntelliSense and all the integrations that you're accustomed to within Visual Studio. So here we have a template that creates some serverless functions. We're going to get back to that later. And one of the things that it creates is actually a DynamoDB table. And here we can see that we can add new attributes to that table, and we can create and manage the table directly from within Visual Studio. So really simple to do the edition part. But once it's edited, one of the things that you're going to want to do is actually deploy that template to your environments. And here, using the Visual Studio toolkits, for the AWS Toolkit for Visual Studio, you can actually create new CloudFormation stacks. CloudFormation is the service that we use internally within AWS for creating repeatable stacks and executing infrastructure as code environments. It is fully integrated within Visual Studio. So here, with a couple clicks, I can go from my JSON file that I was editing and just create a new environment or update an environment. For instance, I created a database and I need to have a new one because I was managing customer data and now I want to be managing product data, which can be a fully different database. I could just go and edit my CloudFormation template, add a new database or a new table, and just ask it to be created again. It's going to update the environment, leave what existed untouched, and create the new resources. I can also delete or upgrade or update the resources based on my needs. So really simple to be within Visual Studio, editing and modifying your production or non-production environment based on your needs. Another practice that we see a lot within DevOps environments is blue-green or A/B. The key thing here is to be able to create an environment, which would be your blue environment in that case, which is your existing production environment. And within these environments, we can have complex features such as load balancing, Amazon EC2 instances, which are virtual machines for executing your platform, and having auto-scaling groups for scaling these applications. And instead of just erasing the environment and creating new platforms or just changing the code that is running on the machines, one of the best practices we have is actually to be able to create a new production environment. So that's going to be a smaller version of your existing production environment. And little by little, you can shift the traffic from your existing environment to the new one. If it works, you can keep on shifting the traffic, and in the end, this new environment is going to be your only production environment. And if there's an error, you can just basically shift the traffic back to the previous environment. You don't even have to roll back your production environment because, again, you have two production environments. And these features also entrenched with the way people do cloud development now, that we have more managed services for doing it. One of them is called Amazon Elastic Beanstalk. And Beanstalk is part of the management services of an entire fleet of services. Whether you want to do machine learning or database environments, or if you want to do management of your machines, like quick deployment and quick management, with AWS Elastic Beanstalk and specifically the AWS SDK for .NET and .NET Core, you can actually access all these platforms directly from your code. So every single thing that you do can be described in a CloudFormation template or executed within your .NET code or PowerShell commandlets as well. So you have not only the capabilities of your language and framework, you have the capabilities of the entire platform. And everything is available within NuGet in Visual Studio, so you can basically just add the packages or the dependencies and upgrades are going to be made here. So here you can see that I do have 2 upgrades and 2 updates that I need to do on my NuGet packages for Visuals for .NET. And so really simple, really fully integrated. You can select and pick and choose exactly what you want to do. So let's get back to my Beanstalk environment. When you start using Visual Studio, on the left here, you can see the AWS Explorer. That Explorer is going to be the key for developer productivity within your environment. You have access to most of the services that developers commonly use on the platform. You can create new virtual machines, you can create new databases, you can create new Amazon S3 buckets where you can store unlimited amounts of data. You can create message queuing, notifications, network environments, and of course you can create Beanstalk environment, which is going to be a hosted web or worker application on AWS. In our case, we can just basically select one of the templates. So let's say the AWS web project. Based on that web project, you're going to have a structure and a solution that's going to be built for you where you can actually start coding and managing your environment. And once you're done coding your environment and coding your application, actually you just need to right-click on the projects that you need to deploy. In this case, I've just selected a web application and click on Select Publish to AWS Elastic Beanstalk. Based on that, you're going to have a wizard that's going to have a few steps. We're going to just go quickly through these steps. The first one is you just select if you want to create a new application environment or if you want to redeploy to an existing environment. And using these features, you can basically implement really quickly and easily the blue-green deployment platforms. You can create multiple platforms based on the same code and just shift the traffic from one platform to another. And if you want just to upgrade an existing platform, again, you have the possibility to either erase the entire platform or do rolling upgrades. So really simple in terms of deployment of your .NET and ASP.NET based applications. So just select a new application, type the name and a URL for this environment. Here, I'm selecting to have a publicly available Beanstalk environment. If you want to have a private one, you can do so as well. So you can have a secure environment for your dev and test applications, for instance. Once you've done that, you select the type of machines. We support multiple versions of Windows, IIS if you want to have 64 bits or even 32 bits Windows environment. For instance, with Windows Server 2008, you can select. You have the choice between multiple instance types. We have more than 40 instance types that are going to be providing you a level of CPU and a level of RAM for your machines. And you can even select customized environments, like I want single instance, I want to have rolling deployments, I've been speaking about it, or if you want to have like an auto-scaling fleet of machines. So really few clicks and choices within Visual Studio, and you can have an application platform that actually provides exactly your needs. Once you've done that, you're going to be selecting Amazon role, so just selecting exactly the security that makes sense for your platform. Just review what you want, type of runtime. We support multiple runtimes, 32, 64 bits again. Click next, and off you go. You can just click on deploy and your application is going to be deployed automatically for you. How it's going to work behind the scenes? I've been speaking about this infrastructure as code environment. Elastic Beanstalk is exactly infrastructure as code, just with a nice UI and lots of automation around it. What it's going to create in the backend is actually going to be creating a CloudFormation template where you're going to have your environment that is going to be provisioned, and you can access the CloudFormation stack that is here. And within Visual Studio, you can see the environment, you can connect to the instances if you want to have some, you can manage the environments and restart the application. So many features are directly embedded within Visual Studio. That works for development environments, but that works as well for production environments. If you do have developers that have access to production environments, it's a security policy that you have to define internally. Then they can directly connect to these instances or connect to the platform, and you can select using the roles exactly what are the rights they're going to get. So really, again, powerful for creating and managing environments directly from within Visual Studio. Another thing that is really key in terms of DevOps practices is continuous deployment. You want to be able, for every single commit from one of your developer, to build a new version of the platform, deploy that new version of the platform maybe to your existing fleet or to a new fleet, get the metrics out of these environments, and based on the metrics, you can then act and create or manage the environment differently. And using this virtual cycle, actually you can create evolving applications and just be really quick for deployments. Now, some of the metrics that we do have within Amazon as a group, we have more than 50 million deployments internally per year. So that's a lot of deployments. That's nearly 2 deployments per second, every single second of the year. And the key here is making sure that when you do have this automation, actually deploying to production is a non-event. You just check in, you're going to have automated processes that are going to help you be in production ready. So how do we do that with Visual Studio? Actually, we're going to see at the 4 steps that we do have in the process. The first one is the source code. You're going to be building source environments. Then you're going to be building that environment. You want to compile code, you want to do unit tests, styles, and many other things. Then you may want to have functional or integration testings. Maybe you want to use Jenkins, maybe you want to use other platforms. And then you want to deploy to production environments, one machine by one machine, or create a new environment using blue-green. You have choices of multiple ways of deployment. The way we do that with AWS is by providing multiple services, such as Code Commit, which is a source control service. Code Build that actually does what it says. It builds platforms so you can have a complete build process, automated unit testing. For the test environments, we work with existing partners and solutions that are available in the market. And we do have a specific solution, which is called AWS Device Farm, for everything that is hosted on mobile devices. So if you do Xamarin Forms development, for instance, you can have automated testing of your platforms on the mobile devices of your choice, integrated within the platforms. And finally, for the production, I was speaking about automated deployment to your platform. That's done with AWS Code Deploy. And getting metrics on your platform is done with AWS X-Ray, which is a platform for gathering metrics for microservices kind of architecture. So you're going to have really live production traffic monitoring of your applications. But as you've seen, that's multiple places and multiple services that you need to integrate together. And when you start a new project, what you want is you want to be quick in getting that project up and running. In this example, we're going to take a Python project. We have multiple languages, and we're going to be soon, I hope, releasing other languages. If you do want to have .NET and .NET Core supported as part of this AWS CodeStar ID, please get to the forums and push for getting these features integrated within the product. So here I'm going to select a Python project. And on Python, I'm going to be integrating that with Visual Studio. But what we've seen here is that we have a lot of moving parts in that environment. And what we want is we want to have a complete and simple environment for creating a project. So here, I'm going to have my source code in AWS Code Commit. My build environment is going to be built on AWS Code Build. And I'm going to leverage AWS CloudFormation for my deployment. And CloudWatch is going to finally be used for monitoring. So all these platforms are actually integrated and can be set up within 5 minutes of your time. So really simple to get started. Here, I just create my platform and just select my display name and email. Based on that, I select what is the IDE that I want to use. And in our case, we do support Visual Studio natively. So if I select Visual Studio, I'm going to be able to select Code Commit, log in with my Git credentials that are on AWS Code Commit. And within Team Explorer, I'm going to be able to see every single code item that is in my environment. So to be integrated within Visual Studio is just a few clicks away and it's just really easy. Once you do that, you can start coding your environment and just select push to your environment and deploy a new version. And you're going to have a portal that is going to show you a wiki, that is going to show you the metrics on the code, the pipeline. So all the items that make sense for your developers and as a team of developers, actually are going to have a portal that hosts everything for it. So really simple and really easy to get that started. So when I want to do a change, I just basically here go to my code. So that's Python code. I just change the output for 100 and just say, instead of having hello world, I just say hello demo. Based on that, I can just right click on the files and just say commit all and push. And once I push, it's going to be sent to code commit. And based on code commit, I'm going to have an entire pipeline that is going to be created and executed for me. So my source in code commit is going to be pulled out, built in a package with AWS Code Build. And AWS Code Build supports Python, Node.js, and also supports .NET Core. So if you want to have a .NET Core application that follows this exact process, it's really just a few clicks away. And then once I have my code build environment, and so my build package validated and unit tested, I can deploy that using CloudFormation. So here I'm going to have a two-step generate a change set and execute that change set. What it gives you is within a few minutes. So here from the first click was a couple of days ago at 2026 French time, and 2031, I had the time to basically create my platform, get it connected to Visual Studio, make my changes, commit to Git, and have it fully integrated and automatically deployed to my production environment, because that pipeline is a quick one. So really the key here is to have developer productivity to the next level. Just change something, commit it, and it's going to be built and deployed here as an API. And by the way, everything here is running through Amazon API Gateway. So it's a REST API that is hosted on the cloud, and it's running on serverless architectures, which we're going to see just later. So what we do provide with Visual Studio is automation for every use cases. If you choose to have platforms running on Amazon EC2, which means just plain virtual machines that you can automate and that you can manage directly with your .NET or PowerShell environments, you can choose it and you can integrate that within CloudFormation. If you work with teams that are accustomed to using Chef or other operations-based DevOps tools, actually you can use AWS OpsWorks and other platforms. If you're more around the developer productivity, you can start working with AWS Elastic Beanstalk. And if you want to create more microservices-oriented serverless architectures, you can start working with AWS Lambda, because Lambda does support .NET Core as a platform. So all the code that you do build within Visual Studio, you can actually deploy in AWS Lambda. And all these platforms actually either rely on or are integrated with AWS CloudFormation. So you have a common automation framework for every single step of your architecture and deployment that is going to be documented and executable as a CloudFormation template. So really simple to get started and running with your platform. One of the customers that has been working specifically with OpsWorks in that environment is Newforma. So they do project information management and they work with customers throughout the world, and they had some issues for quick deployment of their platforms. They were working with many tools, and it took them months to do a release because it's a SaaS-based application. So every new deployment had to be validated and was deployed for everyone. And by leveraging AWS OpsWorks and Visual Studio, because everything is integrated as a .NET application on AWS OpsWorks, actually they were able to have much more easy release cycles. And in their SaaS applications, they can have new versions within a couple of weeks now, instead of having months. So in terms of customer feedback, they have the ability to iterate really much faster with their customers, giving them much more depth and proximity with their customers. So I've been thinking a lot about serverless architectures, but what is serverless architectures? Serverless architectures run usually around AWS Lambda, which is a function execution framework and platform for your application. And Lambda does support .NET Core. And based on that, we provide you templates and samples for your Lambda project. So whether you want to do just a Lambda function or a serverless application, a complete serverless application, you have templates that provide you with that automation. Here we're going to be creating a serverless application in .NET Core. So just by selecting the template, you're going to have the options to select some blueprints. Here what I want to have is a blog API using DynamoDB. So again, just a REST API, but I'm going to be using much more depth in the platform by using DynamoDB, which is a NoSQL data store on AWS. And I'm going to be integrating all that within .NET Core. So when I select this blueprint, I have in my Solutions Explorer a test project where I can have automated unit testing for my application. I'm going to have some C# code, my blog code, so which is a business object, and my functions, which are actually the endpoints to my application, and some documentation in terms of README. And maybe one of the most important one is the serverless.template file, which is a CloudFormation template, actually a SAM template, that will be used to deploy my application to the AWS cloud. And deploying my application as a first time, or again renewing it, is just a right click away. I just right click, select publish to AWS Lambda, and I'm just going to be going through a wizard that allows me to select what is the configuration I want to have, which region I want to deploy to, what is the S3 buckets that I'm going to use for my code. And a couple clicks later, I just have the choice to select the name of my table, what is the capacity, so what is the number of input and output per second that I need to have on my DynamoDB table, and then I just publish. And within a few minutes, if not seconds, I'm going to have an environment that is fully created and automated on AWS. Again, it's leveraging CloudFormation, so I can see the AWS CloudFormation stack, I can access directly the API, and I can change it and modify it based on my needs. Managing my deployed environment is going to be in two ways. First, I may want to have and to go see what is in my database, because when you're using Visual Studio, you're used to connecting to your SQL Server environment, for instance, and just typing request and seeing what is in your environment. Here we provide exactly the same kind of integration with DynamoDB. And the next thing is just being able to run your platform and see that the platform works as soon as you change data. So that's fully available within Visual Studio directly. And here is the platform that it creates. It creates one DynamoDB table, 4 AWS Lambda functions, an API gateway. So it's a pretty complex setup that is actually created for you. But again, the complexity is fully hidden and managed by the fact that you use CloudFormation and you use the serverless application model deployment techniques for doing that. So this platform is just, again, a few clicks away, and you have a highly scalable serverless block platform at hand. So I'm going to have to stop here. What we've covered quickly is bit of the view of what we have on DevOps within AWS, some of the practices we do see, and how Visual Studio can be used to actually deploy and manage your application effectively and efficiently on AWS. And then we finished by seeing some of the new architecture practices that we have around the serverless ecosystem on AWS. So how to get started? Well, actually, the best way to get started is just to create a new AWS account, and you have a free tier. You can use Amazon EC2, you can use AWS Lambda, you can use DynamoDB, and you can use most of the 90+ services that we do have on the platform. And you can start interacting, you can start developing and testing your application for free. And you can start for free, and when it scales, actually it can scale to great heights. We have millions of customers that are running on the platform using all sorts of services, from virtual machines to absolute serverless environments at scale. So if you want to have more, just come meet us, contact us, come to the webinars that we do provide. We also have a series of summits that are going in Europe and in the US at the moment, either for public sector customer or for other companies that are not public sector. And also we do have partners and ourselves who do offer training and certification. So if you're interested in knowing more and being more deep on the platform, you can contact us and we're going to help you find the right level of training and certifications that match your needs. On that, I wanted to thank you, and I wanted to open for the Q&A. So again, get to the Q&A pod, ask any question you do have.